Live in Western Oregon, this is NBC 16 Today.
Good morning. Welcome to NBC 16 Today. I'm Lily Taylor. Zach Brule's off today. We'll check in on our top stories in just a moment, but before we do that, our very own Brianna Chavez has a very first look at weather for us.
Taking a look at satellite and radar, we really aren't tracking out anything specific, at least not for the east or western side of the Cascades. On the east side, well, we've been seeing a little bit of that mixture, the on and off push for some potential isolated thunderstorms, cooler temperatures working their way on in. Just how much cooler are we getting? Well, for areas like Bend, Pendleton, and Baker City, anywhere between 10 to nearly 16 or 17 degrees of a cool down. But as we work our way over onto the east or western side of the Cascades along that I-5 corridor, we're certainly seeing a bit more of that mixed bag between a cool down over in the Umpqua and Rogue Valleys to a warm up throughout the entire Willamette Valley. And we continue to see that push for some slightly warmer but clearer conditions headed out the door for today. We'll start off with some partly cloudy skies into the mid and low 60s and quickly working our way past those 60s to 70s territory. And that drive home and dinner out on the patio may be a good idea as we keep those low 80s around and continue to see those average-like conditions before we see a bit of a warm-up headed our way. We'll track out that warming trend coming up in that full forecast in just a bit.
Developing story this morning, some changes coming for students in the classroom across the state as Governor Kotek signs an executive order banning phones in schools. NBC 16's Gold Meadows spoke with local school districts about the new mandate, how they will implement that order by January 1st.
School districts across Oregon on notice Wednesday that cell phone use won't be allowed during the school day come January 1st. Springfield Public Schools and Eugene 4J say they support Governor Kotek, who signed an executive order Wednesday mandating the shift statewide.
Educators across the country have become more and more familiar and knowledgeable with how devices and the entire culture around being connected and being online, 24 hours a day has impacted these latest generations of children. And it's something that is a serious concern. We can see how it affects their distraction level, their ability to focus.
Both districts tell us they're awaiting policy guidance coming from the state to lead the way in crafting their own policy.
We appreciate Governor Kotek's leadership when it comes to maintaining safe classrooms throughout the state and including here at Springfield Public Schools. It's always a priority for us to have distraction-free schools and classrooms. And as we look for this guidance, the policy guidance around cell phones and electronic devices, that's really what we're looking for is what's the difference between that guidance and what we currently have in place.
The executive order wages a fight against the impacts of social media on developing minds, aiming to decrease loneliness, depression, anxiety, and self-harm among young people associated with cell phone use. According to the Centers for Disease Control, a survey done between July 2021 to December of 2023 showed children ages 12 to 17 spent an average of 4 hours or more a day on their cell phone. Parents we spoke with are on board with the change.
With my children, at their age, I think, technology in a sense is kind of, pulls away from their childhood. In the sense, I would like for them to enjoy more, of being a kid instead of, being caught up with the technology. But in a sense, I feel that, with some parents, it's also important to, to also keep track of their children.
I think it would reduce distractions in the school place, and maybe even you hear about bullying in school and cyberbullying, and maybe it would help with that as well.
For our family, we have 5 kids, and one of our biggest battle is with cell phone. We think not only at home but also at school they should put some kind of limitation.
Springfield Schools currently has limits on cell phone use, and 4J says elementary and middle schools already operate under this policy. But it will be high schools that will see a change as students are now able to use phones between classes.
Any pushback expected, or how much?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, for one, this is America in 2025. There's, you're always going to find folks who have strong sentiments about just about anything. And it's pretty typical that generally folks don't like to be told, what to do, especially if it's something that has otherwise kind of been something that they're used to doing.
4J tells us it may be possible to implement the new policy by the start of the school year, making it easier to adapt rather than changing things up in the middle of the year. In Lane County, I'm Gold Meadows.
While January 1st is the effective date, policies must be adopted by October 31st. The order does leave room for exceptions based on medical conditions, individual education plans, and other individual circumstances that require phone use. The ban was initially introduced as House Bill 2251 at the start of this year's legislative session. It advanced through the House on April 15th, but stalled in the Senate. The last work session on the bill happened on May 21st before it stalled out in the committee, never advancing for a full vote. Union leaders are warning road maintenance employees at the Oregon Department of Transportation to be ready for layoffs. This after the Oregon legislature failed to pass a transportation bill. ODOT says it will lay off hundreds of workers starting next week. Those workers will be off the job by the end of July. The SEIU executive director says for her team, making sure her members are protected is paramount.
To at least give people the right to hopefully get new jobs at the state if they're available at a different agency as quickly as possible, to make sure that they have rights if they do, if their jobs become open again, to be able to come back to them, which we already have, but we want to strengthen that language, to think about how people can, who may be close to retirement, could have options to retire still, but keep their healthcare. So we're trying to look at all of those options right now to see how we can at least help people in this time. And then we have info sessions with members coming next week once we know who's impacted.
Governor Kotek says she wants lawmakers to come to an agreement, but she has not confirmed that she intends to call a special session. If she does, lawmakers would still need time to create a version of that bill that would garner enough votes to pass. In a statement, ODOT says since the transportation bill failed to pass in the Oregon legislature, the agency's hands are tied. The statement says, in part, ODOT cannot use federal funding for maintenance. State law prevents the agency from using project or transit money to pay for maintenance or agency operations. The only way to balance the budget and live within available funding is to make deep and severe cuts. These cuts will harm Oregon's transportation system, Oregon's travelers, and the operational health of the agency. At the nation's capital, this is a live look at the House floor this morning as House Republicans are racing to pass the president's massive spending bill before the July 4th holiday. Debate is now underway before a vote on final passage. NBC's Alice Barr has an inside look as both President Trump and party leaders work throughout the night to sway Republicans to a yes, while Democrats hope to persuade those same lawmakers to vote no.
Passed the one big beautiful bill.
Republicans grinding push to pass President Trump's massive tax and spending bill hitting a hitch in the House, where GOP holdouts held up a procedural vote for hours overnight before finally voting to move ahead. House Speaker Mike Johnson fielding calls from President Trump all night.
And said, who else needs to have a discussion? I'm ready to get on the phone.
The president posting after midnight, what are the Republicans waiting for? What are you trying to prove? MAGA is not happy and it's costing you votes. Earlier in the day, he met with holdout Republicans at the White House looking to ease concerns over the bill's spending, adding substantially to the deficit.
I think we got some good information from the president.
Speaker Johnson saying he wants to avoid ping-ponging the bill with the Senate so the House can't make any changes, even though conservatives don't like Senate adjustments to clean energy credits and the Medicaid overhaul. While moderate Brian Fitzpatrick was ultimately the only Republican voting no on the procedural step, along with all Democrats, who slammed federal aid cuts projected to cost more than 11 million Americans their health insurance.
The largest cut to health care in our history, the largest transfer of wealth from working families to the billionaire class.
The extraordinary things in this bill are so important for the American people.
GOP leaders adamant the bill's key components extending the Trump tax cuts while funding defense and deportations. And the president, who wants it all done, will prove too popular for Republicans to turn down. President Trump has been pressing all along to get the bill to his desk before the July 4th holiday break begins, with concerns that allowing lawmakers in both chambers to make more changes would stall momentum toward funding the president's top domestic priorities. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Members of Oregon's congressional delegation held a virtual press conference yesterday regarding the current status of that bill. Here's what Oregon Representative Val Hoyle said about the bill and how it would impact Oregon if it does pass.
We have 11 out of Oregon's 33 rural hospitals that are on the brink of closing. We can't afford to lose our rural health care. We've got jobs in clean energy, jobs in tourism that are leaving. So people are going to be unemployed while we are shifting costs to the state.
Senator Jeff Merkley added later in the call that the current version of the bill would kick roughly 200,000 Oregonians off of Medicaid over the next 10 years. You can watch the full press conference online on our YouTube channel. To get there, just scan the QR code on your screen. As local districts celebrate the 20th anniversary of Kids in Transition to School program, or KITS, fears remain over future funding if the big, beautiful bill passes. The bill could potentially cut funding to certain programs and budgets. While KITS is not directly supported through federal funding, it is run by 10 local school districts, including 4J, Bethel, Springfield, and South Lane. The Bethel superintendent warns projects like this are the first to go when districts consider budget cuts.
If funding cuts make it so that we can't do this anymore, there are going to be hundreds of children every summer who are not getting this program.
The program is free for children going into kindergarten, providing a jump start on learning the ins and outs of the classroom environment, along with positive social and emotional skills to help them later down the line.
Is we do get a variety of families, right? We do have families that are in the foster system, families that have never had an opportunity to do a pre-K program, and this gives them that opportunity.
One thing that we know, I mean, again, from research for decades, is that kids who get some sort of early childhood education that is, high quality, that is, really strengths-based, will do better.
KITS also holds classes for parents to help them understand what their children need and what they can do themselves to prepare their kids for school. New enrollment starts July 15th and classes go until August 8th. Continuing coverage this morning on the ICE protests held earlier this week. We're learning more about why Eugene police were seen near the federal building during that protest. According to a statement from Eugene Police, federal agents contacted EPD after demonstrators were seen blocking driveways at the downtown federal building. Officers responded to assess the situation and left soon after. Later that evening, federal agents reported a second incident involving unlawful entry and property damage. A single EPD watch commander was sent to evaluate the scene along with several marked vehicles. Police say someone climbed a fence into a secure area. An unmarked federal vehicle later reported that it belonged to ICE was also damaged while leaving the building. EPD says the incident was documented off-site to avoid disrupting the protests. They also report that the officers did not engage with demonstrators and left once no further criminal activity was observed. In a statement to the newsroom, EPD reaffirmed its inability to assist ICE officers, saying, in part, the Eugene Police Department adheres to Oregon statute, which prohibits the use of local law enforcement resources to direct or apprehend individuals for violations of federal immigration law. EPD does not engage in immigration enforcement and remains committed to ensuring that our services are accessible, impartial, and grounded in the rights and safety of all members of our community.